Hi, everyone. It's me, Emily Best, founder and CEO of Seed&Spark. For your latest installment of 30-Minute Mentor, we are so excited to bring you today the man behind a viral sensation, Skinamarink. Joining me also today is Darcy from the sign language company, who is helping us make this event more accessible. So Darcy and sign language company, thank you so much for being here. I'm not going to mess around with like intros. Let's just get Kyle Edward Ball to the screen to talk about. Hi, Kyle. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Where are you joining us from?
Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which I always tell Americans is like Canada's Austin.
Oh, I love that comparison. Having been to Edmonton, I totally see how you get that. Although the only time I was there was absolutely covered in wildfire smoke.
It's like that right now. Unfortunately, we are in wildfire season early this year.
So a sort of gloomy overcast. Well, Kyle, I'm so grateful to you for being here today, and I just want to dive right in because I have a bunch of questions. Our audience has a bunch of questions. I want to start with one that I'm sure you've answered a lot, but where did Skinamarink as a project start?
So, a few years before we made the movie, I had a YouTube series, and I had done that for a while and thought, okay, maybe it's time. I might be able to do a feature. And I thought, okay, before I do a feature, I should have like a stepping stone proof of concept to bridge the gap both in my experience and also help with promotion, for example, in applying for grants or a crowdfund. So I did a proof of concept, kind of standalone short film called Heck that had similar ideas and most importantly, similar aesthetic style to Skinamarink, but also was kind of its own thing with a slightly different plot and slightly different themes. Um, so I did that, and nothing really huge came from that. Like I submitted to a few festivals, didn't get in anything, but I thought, well, I'm happy with this. I think I'm ready to do a feature. So, and I wrote a script during the second wave of COVID-19, and then I was off to the races into development and pre-production after that.
And at what point did you decide to crowdfund?
So before crowdfunding, I had spoken with my friend Andy, who had done a documentary called The Line, where he had done some crowdfunding, and I think he also got some grant money. And he talked with me about, okay, so apply for grants. And if you get some grants, but not enough grant money, you can crowdfund the shortfall. Or alternatively, if you get no grants, you can crowdfund the whole thing. And then we had applied for 2 grants in Canada and didn't get them. And the good thing about that was we actually, from our grant applications, had all this material we could then like migrate over to the crowd fund, and for the most part we didn't have to change that much. So
For the Americans listening, a grant is something that sometimes governments organize and give to people when they care about the arts.
yeah.
I was just going to say, like, a lot of our audience is American, and like there are some private grants, but man, we don't have the same infrastructure. So once you decided to crowdfund, what went into the setup for you?
So from the get-go, I was told to use Seed&Spark again through my friend Anthony, because it came highly recommended. So he's like, don't use Indiegogo, don't use this, don't use that, use Seed&Spark. It is the best. And he actually had stories about how towards the end of his campaign, he hadn't quite made the money. And so he spoke with people at Seed&Spark of like how, like, what are some avenues I can explore? It's a documentary about this, and they helped him with that. So I went on Seed&Spark, just set up the account, read through all the stuff. Like, you have to watch these videos, you have to do this, and did that, set up the crowdfund. And Seed&Spark really is really good, right? So a big thing for me was like, and granted, I take things super seriously. Like, I don't know if everyone watches all the videos, but I did. I like treated it like school. And then at the end of it, you do your campaign draft, you send it to Seed&Spark, they review it and provide notes, like, and very reasonable notes, right? And for the most part, everything was, yeah, got it, change that. And just even little things, right? Like, I accidentally wrote assistant producer instead of associate producer, and they're like, there's no such thing as an assistant producer. And then there was like, the only thing I didn't do, and this was another nice thing about Seed&Spark too. They're like, okay, so do a pitch video. And at the time I had I thought I would be drawing a lot from my YouTube community. And a big thing with pitch videos is they're like, they want to show the filmmaker in the video. And I told them, the people at Seed&Spark, I'm like, okay, I think it was Brie Castelli was
Brie Castellini.
Yeah, who's in the credits of Skinamarink for I said, okay, I understand the reasoning behind showing the filmmaker in the pitch video. I don't deny that that is valuable, but like my YouTube channel, I never show my face. And I'm afraid it would like mess up the mystique of the YouTube channel. So like I'm going to try to do a pitch video where I'm not shown. And they were like, okay, we understand. Usually it's good still to show the filmmaker just because of a kind of trust of, oh, I'm going to give money to someone faceless, whatever. But they still understood, okay, but this is, they were accommodating in that aspect. So yeah.
Awesome. Just for the record, Kyle and I have never met before today, and he was not paid to say any of these things. This is very nice of you, Kyle. I really appreciate
Yeah.
this. And once you got crowdfunding, did you feel like it like met your expectations? Was it different from what you thought? And I know our audience is really curious, like what did you do to reach out to the audience that was appropriate for your film?
Yeah, so I didn't quite have the reach that I do now, obviously, right? So it was two-pronged. So no, a big thing was the crowdfund was successful because I have a large group of filmmaker friends in Edmonton who were willing to share the crowdfund. Now, with that being said, when you have a big group of filmmaker friends, every other week someone's doing something or promoting something.
Yep.
So, with that in mind, like I just have my 4 or 5 friends who are, I'm like, okay, I know all our friends and family are inundated with, oh, I'm a filmmaker, I'm promoting this thing. So try to make like personalized connections. So if you have an aunt who has a lot of money who you think would donate, don't just share it, like email them.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of that, a lot of personalized stuff and a lot of promoting and pushing, but not pushing too much, right? Now, with that being said, most of our crowdfunding money was through friends and family, which is something they did say in like the video tutorial things. But a lot of it was from, for example, I think like over $1,000 of our crowdfund was through our main executive producer, Edmund Rotia. The only thing that was really different with the crowdfund with that I hadn't quite anticipated was how much of it was going to be like instead of cash dollars, like someone donating hard drives, someone donating like items or labor, but not a huge amount. Like I think of our 15,000 Canadian crowd fund, we had I think raised $12,000, and the rest was like in kind. So someone donating hard drives. Acting fee, etc.
Amazing. Yeah. How much I read a bunch of articles also, and I saw that you had some sort of local supplies. Like how much crowdsourcing even outside the campaign did you do? Because I think sometimes we forget how much community resourcing can happen. I will just say personally, part of the reason that Seed&Spark was launched with a wish list feature where you can list the individual items was because it came out of a crowdfunding campaign I did a decade ago where we listed all the individual items we needed, and we ended up raising 23,000 in cash, but hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and gifts of locations and goods and services, just because of how we framed the campaign. So I'd just be curious, like what other crowdsourcing did you do?
Yeah, so just in a nutshell, here's what we did. We did, I think hard drives was a big thing. We crowdsourced I think a few other items, like smaller, like I think there was some set deck and props that we had crowdsourced. And there was stuff even that wasn't formally on our wish list that we did crowdsource outside of the crowdfunding campaign. So the credenza that appears in the movie that was donated from another production in town that had a film set in the 1980s, and so they had all this 1980s set deck that would work for a movie set in the mid 90s that they were getting rid of. So that was one thing. Um, Another thing is my director of photography works for the local film and video co-op. So we were able to use a ton of camera equipment because he had like not a decade, but like something like 6 or 7 years of rental credit that he had not used. So we were able to use that for camera equipment. Um, Outside of that, like, oh, another thing too. So coming back to set deck and props, I think this may have even been a wish list item. I don't know, but no, it couldn't have been. My friend Andy, who again was the person who directed me to Seed&Spark, he's like he's a Lego collector, so he's bins and bins and bins and bins of Lego, and we needed bins and bins and bins of Lego as props for the movie, so we were able to source that as well for free. And other little things too, like the TVs that appear in the movie, those were crowdsourced because like I don't have tube TVs, most people don't, but I have a friend who hoards a bunch of old electronics, so we were able to crowdsource that too.
I love that so much. I think, especially when we're making movies, even time period pieces, thinking about who in our community we might be able to reach out to directly, especially for set deck. I'm remembering now that actually one big budget item that got taken off our list was we had friends who had just finished shooting a slightly higher budget movie, and they had like all the crafty setup, like the coffee urns and the chairs
Oh,
and the tents and like everything. And they're like, if you can drive to New Jersey and pick this up, you can have it. And we were like, done, right?
yeah, that was like pretty identical to like how we got that credenza. It was a much bigger production that we had like mutual friends and they were getting rid of it. And we're like, that's our credenza. And I still have that credenza too. So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. So I realized like we got to move to the next part of the movie, the next piece that people are really excited about because we don't have much time. So you fundraise successfully, you make the movie, and there were a whole lot of hiccups along the way. And you can sort of decide how many of those you want to outline, but I'm really curious of like, how did it go from a $10,000 budget to a box office smash? Can you just sort of talk us through that trajectory?
Yeah. So after we wrapped, I spent 4 or 5 months editing it. And the big thing for distribution was I was always told, okay, if you want to get a distributor, your biggest tool is cut a really sick trailer, right? So there's Reddit is a huge resource for promotion and resource for filmmakers. So before I was even finished cutting the actual movie, like I hadn't locked the final cut, I figured, okay, I might as well get a head start on this. I have enough in here that I can do a teaser trailer. So I cut and I worked really hard to make sure the teaser trailer was really good and even something that like wasn't just for a movie and then later on we would edit a trailer. Like I spent my time to be like, if we get one shot at making a trailer, this will be the one. So I cut the trailer for the movie and I posted it to the subreddit for filmmakers. And the thing is, for a big subreddit like that, you can't just post because everyone would be posting stuff. You have to give a whole spiel about, I forget, there's a rule for posting trailers. You can't just post a trailer. You have to give a spiel. You have to do work, blah, blah, blah. So I did that. And the trailer kind of blew up on that subreddit because it is a really effective trailer. And filmmaker, our first kind of like famous-ish fan of the movie was Jim Cummings, the guy who directed Thunder Road, and so he actually saw it on the filmmaker subreddit and actually DM'd me and said, "Hey, your movie looks sick," and I'm like, "Thank you." And so
Jim
after,
Cummings, who has also done a 30-minute mentor with us and recently
oh,
did his new set of short films on Seed&Spark.
perfect, yeah, I figured as such, and so then after a while, a very small but a good distributor named Mutiny Pictures saw our posting on Reddit. They contacted me. The person who acquired the film was this gentleman who worked for acquisitions for Mutiny Pictures. Contacted me, and I looked into the distributor because I heard horror stories about distribution companies. So before I signed with this small but impressive, like they had a handful of like Sundance movies in their catalog, at least from what they showed on their website. So I figured, okay, they're reasonable. Before I signed with them, I had a few meetings to get a feel for them. And more importantly, I'd contacted a few other of their existing filmmakers, which was a big thing. And I contacted them, had Zoom meetings with them, and said, okay, so I've heard nightmares about certain distributors. So what can you tell me about Mutiny Pictures? And they gave me very nice but very honest feedback of like, okay, they are a good distributor. I've read through the contract. I have other friends who have had nightmare distributors, and they say this one is better. With that being said, it's 4 people working there, so they're tiny, so their resources are tiny. But outside of that, so things like responding to emails can take a while, etc. Outside of the fact that they're small and can't necessarily have the resources of that, they're a great distributor. So from talking to vetting them with 2 clients, I signed with them. Then the big thing of how the movie blew up was we had submitted to festivals. Festivals are so important, and a big thing was we submitted to the Fantasia International Film Festival, and we got into Fantasia, which completely changed the trajectory of the movie because it's a enormous festival, impressive festival. So getting into Fantasia can be the difference of Shudder actually watching your movie versus not, right? And we got into Fantasia. We had our first positive reviews from reputable magazines and publications from Fantasia. So we actually had a Rotten Tomatoes page we could direct potential people to just say, oh, here are the reviews so far. And it was shortly after that we got our Shudder deal, which I had nothing to do with. It was all through, again, this is the big thing about having a distributor is they can talk to a Shudder or an AMC Networks or a Lionsgate or this or that, because they won't talk to me, right? So they brought it to Shudder, and Shudder signed, right? So, and wanted it to be a Shudder original from the get-go. I can't.
I muted myself because my dog started barking. The fun part of being working from home still. I have to understand from a $10,000, $15,000 feature to being reviewed by every single major publication there is, right? The Times, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, all the trades. Like, what has that been like for you? And what does it mean for you now? I mean, I can't imagine it was all sunshine and I mean, it's unbelievable, but like, what was that actually like for you?
It was a roller coaster because, like, it's not all sunshine, but when there's sunshine, there's a lot, right? So it kind of it wasn't like this. It was like, right? And there was different parts where it got even bigger and bigger. So one kind of here's a good example, right? So after we played Fantasia, got the Shutter deal, Shutter was like, we're gonna release Halloween 2023, the coveted Halloween release, right? Which that felt like winning the lottery. And I'm like, awesome. And then in the meantime, we'll play at a bunch of other festivals, right? So particularly festivals in Europe, eventually festivals in Asia, and we'll sell to all the non-Shutter territories in the interim, right? So then we played at one of the European festivals we were playing at right around Halloween 2022, was a festival that had an online portion. And unfortunately, the movie was pirated like that, right? Like with including the entire slate of movies that were playing at that festival, most of which did not have a deal with Shutter, right? So they were screwed essentially, right? So um and then coming back to having a small distributor, um, like a major downside to a small distributor is no matter how hard they work, like dealing with massive problems like your movie's been leaked online and is going viral, they don't necessarily have the experience or resources to deal with. And also, in the same vein, like, uh, or even talking with me, like I was panicking, and I think they didn't even know 100% what to do, and didn't even necessarily know if it was, for example, a good idea to communicate this to Shutter or keep it quiet and see. But regardless, those the 3 weeks after the movie was pirated were a complete nightmare for me, because the whole time I thought, okay, what if Shutter rips up the deal for this? I don't know. Because again, I have no contract with Shutter. I haven't seen the contract with Shutter. That's between my distributor and them. I only have a contract with my distributor.
Hmm.
So that was horrible. And then about 3 weeks in, Shutter contacted me and said, "Okay, we know about the leak. Don't worry, we'll deal with it. We're not going to rip up the contract or anything." And then slowly after that, because of the leak, the movie went viral and kind of had this stratospheric trajectory. Like, I don't know if we would have opened in 800 theaters if it weren't for the piracy. Um, so, but with that being said, because of the leak, instead of Halloween 2023 release, everyone at Shutter IFC Films had to scramble, and like, instead of Halloween 2023, it had to be released January 2013, right? Like practically not even 2 weeks into 2023, right? So that was definitely a crazy thing. Once the movie came out, it was a relative success, $15,000 Canadian budget, $2.1 million domestic box office, and growing, right? So, for example, we just opened in Mexico last weekend, so hopefully we did good there. So yeah, that was an example of one of the many problems you might have in distribution and etc. This is kind of a crazy example. It doesn't necessarily happen to every movie, but it's a good thing to demonstrate both the bad and the good. And also, I just want to be clear. I always have to make this stipulation whenever I talk about the piracy of the movie. So, number one, I personally have no ill will to the people who watch the movie by any means. Mainly because, okay, the people who pirated the movie, they didn't know we had a Shutter deal. They had a fairly limited understanding. Like a lot of these were just teenagers in the US. They don't exactly have a comprehensive view of worldwide horror movie distribution, right? So they just found a movie and fell in love with it. So I have no ill will to the people who watched the movie through piracy and fell in love with it. Like if at the end of the day, if you watched the movie and loved it, great. That just makes me happy that you love my movie. With that being said, to other filmmakers, Skinamarink is kind of the best case scenario of a movie being pirated. So, with that in mind, don't take this as a case example of, oh, well, look at what happened to Kyle Edward Ball. His movie was leaked and it played in 800 theaters. This was kind of a special circumstance. We already had like the ink very dry on a deal with AMC Networks. So Shudder, IFC are under the AMC Networks umbrella. So don't think, oh, I can just leak my movie online and it'll all be hunky dory. That will likely not be the case, particularly if you don't have the ink dry on a deal with a major conglomerate like AMC Networks. So yeah.
I appreciate you so much. One, for your deep generosity and understanding of the audience, and two, for that cautionary thing for filmmakers. It does occur to me that like the music business and the film business are starting to converge deeply in the way that they're using the internet to lift certain properties, and that there is this real fine line between fair use, piracy, and promotion. A lot of people are asking for another half hour, but we can't do that today. And we have reached our time. And I do have a bunch more questions. So I'm wondering, Kyle, I'm sort of putting you on the spot here. Could we do this again sometime soon for this audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to do it. This has been a breeze. My only thing is ideally, because I'm a horror filmmaker and stay up late, let's maybe see if we can do it a bit later in the day next time.
Great idea. I love that idea. We'll do a late night chat with Kyle Edward Ball for his
It doesn't have to be like late night, just like a bit later on in the day.
No problem. We'll have to compromise because I have two small children, and so we'll find a good time in between us and do a later evening chat. To the audience who is here, thank you so much, and we will we see you your next half hour, and we will make sure it happens. To Darcy and the Sign Language Company, thank you. We do events all the time, and so you can keep up with us at seedandspark.com/events. And Kyle, thank you so much. And shout out to Brie Castellini, whose name has been dropped more than a few times. She's actually here watching today.
Perfect.
Been a great supporter of yours all along the way. And thanks to the team at Seed&Spark, to Danny and Frankie for making this happen. And we will see y'all at the next one. Bye now.
Bye.